INSIS, Instituto Mexicano de Ciudades Inteligentes, Sostenibles y Sustentables. Les doy la más cordial de las bienvenidas a esta segunda parte del evento La Ciudad 2030, con un reto que se nos aproxima, que ya está sobre nosotros y debemos de estar preparados. Nuestras ciudades tienen que garantizar la calidad de vida de los habitantes de las mismas. Son las 10:01, tiempo de la Ciudad de México, y ya está aquí nuestro primer ponente, el señor Jonathan Reichental. Bienvenido, Jonathan.
Well, hello there.
Welcome, Jonathan. I'm going to read your brief resume.
Wonderful.
El doctor Jonathan Reichental es un líder tecnológico y empresarial, ganador de múltiples premios cuya carrera ha abarcado tanto el sector público como el privado. Ha sido gerente senior de ingeniería de software, director de innovación tecnológica y se ha desempeñado como director de información tanto en O'Reilly Media como en la ciudad de Palo Alto, California. El señor Reichental es actualmente el fundador de la firma de asesoría, inversión y educación Human Future y también crea educación en línea para LinkedIn Learning. Ha escrito 3 libros muy afamados y muy reconocidos, por cierto, 3 libros sobre el futuro de las ciudades. Smart Cities for Dummies, Exploring Smart Cities, Activity Book for Kids y Exploring Cities, Bedtime Rhymes. Su último libro, Data Governance for Dummies, sale a finales de este año 2022. Actualmente está trabajando en un nuevo libro sobre criptomonedas. Tenemos con nosotros, damas y caballeros, a un auténtico bestseller. Jonathan, if you're so kind, please proceed with your lecture. You're very welcome.
Great. Thank you, Javier. It's a real pleasure to be back. Thank you for the invitation. It's such a delight to be part of your important event and to speak on such a timely and urgent topic, the future of our cities. So I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation. So if you just bear with me, we get this up on the screen. Here we go. There we go. Full screen. Wonderful. I'm assuming you'll let me know if you can't see it. So thank you very much. Good morning from San Francisco here in Northern California. It's a lovely, cool morning. It's a fascinating city to be part of these days. It's got a great history, as you know, and it's in challenging times, but it represents sort of a lot of the different challenges and opportunities that cities all over the world have. My talk today, my short talk today, is a sort of a roundup of the global city movement, but I want to focus on sort of that intersection between urban living, sustainability, and the human experience. So I want to see if we can find some areas where there's that intersection, and we can explore what's happening and where we're going. I really do think we're in this incredible period of time. There's now a super focus on the future of cities, and city leaders all over the world are taking a new approach to innovation and best practices and using technology. So it's a remarkable period of change, but also the challenges are great too. So let's talk about those. And first, I want to take you to New York City. Let's go to the great city here, Manhattan in New York. And what a great city to visit, the intersection of the world. And in fact, we're going to go to Times Square. And I want to take you back to approximately 2007, 2008. And here you can see a picture from that time. You can see all the qualities of Times Square there, the yellow cabs, right? The famous New York yellow cabs. You see buses and cars. You see a lot of people. There's a lot of action happening in this important center for not only the residents, but also for tourists. It's a very popular place. And what happened in 2007, 2008 was, the city was, as they do, and all cities do, was monitoring and, keeping data and observations on things like motor vehicle accidents and pedestrian accidents. And there seemed to be quite a lot of increase in accidents. And so they were thinking, what can we do to make this a safer place? What can we do to sort of change the game? Now, the other thing about looking at this picture of Times Square is it suffers from its popularity, right? It's so popular that it's always congested, it's noisy, the air quality isn't great because you have all these cars and vehicles spewing carbon into the air. And of course, you have the challenge of accidents. And so what you want is all the positives, a great place, but you want to try to reduce all the negative effects. So the team at the City Hall in New York, working with Mayor Michael Bloomberg at the time, were trying to figure out, well, what do we do? And so one of the ideas was, well, let's shut it down for a few months to all traffic. Let's stop traffic and route the traffic around Times Square. Now, as you can imagine, this was not a popular idea, especially with the cab drivers and the truck drivers and the bus drivers. They were all thinking, well, this is going to be chaos. This is a major artery through the city, and you're going to shut it down. But with innovation, sometimes you have to take bold risks and you have to do things that are unpopular. You have to try things, right? You can't let all the people saying no stop us from progress, from trying things that we're uncertain what the outcome will be. Of course, we did it. So for a period of time back in 2008, 2009, the city decided to shut down a good deal of the Times Square area to motorized vehicles. And now check out this picture. See what has happened. Well, you do see some traffic on the far right-hand side. They didn't shut it down entirely. But look on the left-hand side. Now you see people standing around. You see tables and umbrellas, and there's people having conversations, and they're actually stopping. They're stopping to take in the wonder of Times Square. And immediately it's less noisy. The air quality is improving. But mostly, and this was the target, the accidents had dropped from between, depending on the type of accident, from 15%, 15 to 40%, 40. From 15 to 40% of accidents were reduced. So if you look at the core reason, why did they do it? They really met, and I think based on the team's own expectations, they exceeded what they thought was possible. Now, seeing the success, the city then proposed to make it permanent. Remember, this was an idea that was going to be temporary, just as an experiment, but it was so successful in reducing accidents, in creating a better environment, and also making a place where people could relax and spend more time, and really focus on the people experience rather than the motor vehicles. They decided to obviously propose to make this thing permanent, and it was made permanent. You can see the difference here. Look at the left-hand side where you have the chaos of the 2008, 2009 period. And then on the right-hand side, you see what Times Square looks like today, largely pedestrianized and a much more beautiful, successful area in many of the dimensions they were measuring. But there's two other lessons we can take from this, two very important lessons. One is, well, actually, let's do three. Let's do three lessons we can take away. Number one, innovation, people will resist it. And innovation sometimes isn't comfortable, and it doesn't feel right when you first propose it. That probably means you're onto something quite interesting. The second thing is the drivers, the cab drivers and the truck drivers, who all were concerned that traffic would get worse. They were surprised because unintuitively, the traffic improved, right? Probably a little surprise for all of us, right? Because rerouting the traffic, some better decisions were made and traffic actually moves smoother. But the big takeaway, and this is the one that I want to really reinforce as a message in my talk today, is we have built over the last about 100 years our cities to serve cars, to serve vehicles. We lost the focus, which is really to build cities for people. Build cities for people. And what New York really did by pedestrianizing this important, busy, noisy area was they gave the city back to the people. They gave the city back to the people. They created place, right? And this feels and looks like a characteristic of the cities of the future. We're finally realizing that we got too far away from the core. We built our cities for other things, right? Now we need to build and retrofit our cities for people. Let's look at another example. I want to take you to the beautiful city of Paris, right? Let's go to the Champs-Élysées in Paris, France. Again, has a lot of the many of the characteristics of New York City, right? It's a very, Times Square is specifically. Champs-Élysées is the main artery through Paris, much like the Times Square area makes up a part of the core artery of New York City. This is a busy, full of traffic and motorcycles and taxi cabs and trucks, and it's full of tourists. In fact, it's so full of tourists and it's so unpleasant sometimes, Parisians won't go here, right? So the people who live in the city don't even want to go to their major street. So the question became very important for the city leadership over the last 10 years. Are we headed in the right direction? Are we creating the city we want for the future? Are we creating a city that has harmony between what's necessary to serve the people with nature and sustainability? Are we finding that intersection? Well, the answer is no. Paris has and was drifting into a city that was dominated by cars and vehicles, and humans were being set aside. So then the question is, what do you do? What do you do? Well, then you super focus on transformation. And a little bit sort of buoyed on by New York's success, they proposed to pedestrianize and make the Champs-Élysées into an urban garden. Now, of course, what you can imagine is people resisted this. People said, no, you can't do this. This is a crazy idea. Once again, that probably means that it was a good idea, because if you get people who fight it and you get people who are for it, now you have something to talk about. Now you have something to try. And it feels like it might be game changing. So the city of Paris now is spending about $300 million to convert this major street into an urban garden, largely remove the cars and focus on people. They want to give the city back to the people. This project will take a few more years, and depending on success, they will spread this phenomenon across the city. Let's stay in Paris for a moment. Again, I want to bring you back to a phenomenal transformation that's happening. I went to Paris in 2012, met with the deputy mayor, and the deputy mayor said they were experimenting with bicycles. And a lot of people, a lot of leadership, a lot of leaders in the city of Paris said, Parisians will never embrace bicycles because it's not a Parisian thing to do. Well, they tried it. They said, hey, why don't we make available some of those bikes in the racks that people can, put a credit card in and take a bike out and cycle around the city. And they put 200 in, and they were all taken. And they did 1,000, and they were all used, and they couldn't keep up with the demand. Today, when you fast forward 10 years to 2022, Paris has become a cycling city. It's almost like a miracle. And here's a picture of Paris today. And it, much like Amsterdam and a lot of European cities, and in fact, European cities all over South America, and even now beginning to be very common in North America and all around the world, is we are making our cities more cyclable, more walkable. We're making our cities more geared towards the needs and desires and in harmony with people and nature. When Parisians were asked what did they think about this, they said, well, we love it because, cycling is much easier than sitting in traffic. Cycling makes us healthy. Now we're outside. It makes us happier when you're exercising and you're in the fresh air. We can and are transforming our cities. Now, let me go back just a little bit and set the stage. We are in a century of cities, and our future as humans belongs to cities. Here you see the urbanized world. About 3% of the land, 3% of the land is covered in cities. That will grow, by the way, through this century to about 6%. we think about 6% of the world will be covered in cities. And you can see this picture gives us such a great history and story of the planet, both the good news stories, but also this picture shows a lot of the bad news stories about political alignments and borders and colonization and conflict. But it also shows that, you know, here's where the urbanization is, here is how telecommunications and power is distributed today, and where we have some progress to make. We have grown into an urban society over the last few hundred years, and it's been phenomenally rapid, right? We went from less than 1 billion people about 500 years ago to now, this month, in either October or November, we will be a planet of 8 billion people, and well over about 60% will be living in an urban environment. There's no historical precedent for this. Our cities serve us well, right? Cities are the most complicated thing that humans have ever created, and they are the most successful thing humans have created to bring people out of extreme poverty, right? But they have a lot of issues. In the 20th century, we had a great big party, right? We urbanized, we built cars, we electrified the world, we grew our cities rapidly, we created mega cities. But now in the third decade of the 21st century, we are suffering a hangover, and we have to solve problems like congestion. And look at all the carbon emissions that's coming from these vehicles. If we're going to add another 2 billion human beings in cities, which we will over the next few decades, we can't have an environment where every one of those has a car, and a picture like this doubles the amount of cars. That can't work. Our mechanisms of production are creating situations where our air quality is not what we wanted. Whilst you might look outside and it looks okay, you don't see some of the toxic particles which enter our lungs. The World Health Organization says that 8 million people die directly or indirectly, unfortunately, because of air quality. And it's our cities, which are centers of hyper-consumerism, that is generating these mechanisms of production. By the way, looking at this picture, look at the bottom left. Those are homes. There are homes in the bottom left of this picture. Our societies are not serving everybody. We need to build and make sure that our cities, while they are so successful in addressing the needs of so many, there are many who are not being served. Our cities are not inclusive enough. They are not equal enough. There's not enough equity. And when that happens, none of us are equal. So we have work to do to bring every human into the thriving ecosystem so that they can prosper in the way they want to, but they can have options and they can have a good quality of life that everybody wants. And in this story, you know, our success has resulted in a planet that's in a bit of, you know, in an issue, has an issue, is suffering, right? We are now in a, whether we debate it or not, we have a climate emergency that is making our storms bigger and more frequent, our droughts longer and drier, our rains heavier and more destructive, our floods bigger and more prolonged. This is a problem right now from our behavior. A lot of it has originated in the urban environment. This is a picture from my neighborhood here, San Francisco. This is not a beautiful picture, unfortunately, of the evening in San Francisco. No, this is a picture of fires making a dystopian visual of the landscape in the afternoon. This is about 1 o'clock in the summer of 2020. Not only were we locked inside because of a global pandemic, but we couldn't go outside because the air quality was so bad. Now, the good news is we have smart people thinking about and developing and deploying new solutions. We're rethinking our cities. We understand that our future belongs to cities, and we got to take steps. We have to take steps that change the game. If our future belongs to cities, and I really believe it does, we have work to do. We need to transform the transportation in our cities. We have to transform the energy. And when we do that, when we move from carbon-based energy to renewables, Well, it's going to change the environment. It's going to change our relationship with the environment. It's going to change the nature of how our cities look and behave. In this city here in Freiburg in Germany, many homeowners get paid from the power utility. They don't pay a bill. They get paid because they produce more power than they need and they sell it back onto the grid. We are in the opening years of an energy revolution, which is largely a good story, although we're very critical, right? You can see on the left-hand side here how we are still producing, and we will continue to produce, carbon-based energy. It's too easy and it's too cheap to stop, and it works, right? Even in 2030, we will introduce 64 gigawatts of new energy. But look at the other story on the right-hand side. During the time when we are kind of reducing, but still producing carbon and net new carbon energy, the renewables will explode. And you can see in 2030, 279 gigawatts of new energy introduced to the world. And a lot of that is wind and a lot of that solar. We think that solar is going to be the big winner. The data on solar is really positive. Look at this data in terms of the unit cost for a watt on a solar panel, going from $2 in 2010, which was 12 years ago. And over 10 years, it went from $2.02 down to 20 cents. That's the kind of chart you want to see. That's innovation in motion. And at the same time as the cost of a unit of energy for solar dropped so radically, the capacity and the innovation for producing it went way up. We love this diagram. It shows us that we can transition. Our relationship with the world, our human relationship with the world, can be transformed. It takes time. It's sometimes disruptive and ugly, but we have the capacity. We've shown this over the many years, many hundreds of years of the industrial revolutions. We can evolve, and we will use new technologies, right? We'll use new technologies to be able to understand our environment. At the end of the day, we can make better decisions if we have good quality data. We also need to know what questions to ask, right? Cities have a lot of data because that's what cities do a lot of the time. They do work that produces data. They do work that needs data. So they are both producers and collectors. But now the question is, do we know the questions to ask? Do we have the skills? Do we have the technology, right? For example, sensors are now making up a bigger part of our environment. Here you see actually a project that I worked on with my team at the city of Palo Alto. Here you see some sensors on a light that do things like detect air quality or whether there are open or closed parking spaces. Deploying sensors is a really big deal. It helps us understand the living environment. And these sensors, we're moving from about 40 billion connected devices, which are largely sensors, to, over the next just 3 years, 75 billion. That's 30 billion more Internet of Things that we are connecting. And I want to make the point here. 20% of those devices are being deployed in our cities. Cities today are the largest users of the Internet of Things, doing incredible things, everything from improving our energy grids to helping with parking and better waste management. It's a good news story, whilst also producing a high volume of new data. The data that we're producing through IoT in our cities has answers about our relationship and the decisions we need to make as we determine how humans can live in concert with nature and sustainability and the urban environment. We have to figure out through the right data and the right questions how we build the future that we want. New technologies are going to transform the environment. They're going to be imposed on us, whether we like it or not. And one of the biggest technological shifts that we're going to see over the next few years is the shift from driving cars to self-driving cars, to autonomous vehicles. There may be no bigger technological revolution than the autonomous transportation revolution. And so cities, we need to prepare for this too. Hopefully this becomes a very good news story. Can we design our cities differently? So for example, our cities don't need traffic lights or stop signs or lanes or even the grid system. So much of America, for example, the United States of America was built around grids. You know why? Because we built them for cars. Now, to go back to the theme, we need to build our cities for people. The future of cities is building cities for people, and autonomous vehicles may help with that. We need to get ready for that. We need to prepare. We need to work with our regional and federal partners. We have to work with the technology companies. We need to understand what this means to city planning. Do we need more parking lots? Do we need more parking spaces in a world of autonomous vehicles where vehicles aren't even owned? This is not a prediction on the future. This is not an aspiration. This is happening right now. Autonomous vehicles are here right now, operating in many major cities in the world. And we'll get new capabilities. We're going to see drones coming in big volumes, right? The skies will be full of drones delivering and doing all sorts of city work. These new capabilities are going to change what city leaders have access to and how we think about the role of robotics and artificial intelligence and transportation and energy. Now, this is not just about doing the right thing, but this is also about doing well, right? As we transform all the cities of the world, and we are entering this urban renaissance, the market opportunities are in the trillions, right? So for the vendor community, for those that are innovators and want to provide and find solutions, this is a great opportunity. But it also reflects the fact that there's a demand. You can't supply innovation to a market where there's no demand, right? We have work to do to transform our cities. A lot of our center of our cities and the peripheries of our cities have been beat up by changing global economics. Here in the United States, we see a lot of internal blight because some manufacturing went to different countries, but we ignored this. Now we have a hangover. We have issues around poverty and crime and drugs. The Renaissance has to be about rebuilding this. We need to take these beat up areas of our cities and rethink them. In fact, we should focus on creating innovation districts, a great phenomena around the world, taking areas that need to be rebuilt and revitalized, bringing the assets that we have in our communities, the economic assets, the companies that live and thrive in our cities, a whole variety of diversity of people, and bring these together to create innovation ecosystems so our rundown, beat up areas can be transformed into places where people want to work and live, and it needs to work in harmony with nature and the environment, places that can be sustained. These are the innovation districts. And now, as I start to wrap up, let me give you examples of two cities in the world that are doing many of the things correctly. Two cities that long ago decided that they understood that the future belonged to cities and they would have to think completely differently about this future. I take you now to the city of Copenhagen in Denmark. What a beautiful city. What a beautiful city, full of water and walking areas. This city decided some time ago that they were going to build a smarter community, a city of the future that was based on a greater harmony between people, nature, and the built environment. And so everything they do is part of that mentality. And the key aspect here, it comes from leadership. It comes from leading, right? The leaders of the city believe in this. They make their smart community efforts a priority. They focus on the environment. They focus on new economics of startups and tech companies. And they have been successful in making, over time, cars less of a priority, focusing on walking and particularly on cycling. The second and last city I want to share with you, completely different in Southeast Asia, is Singapore. Singapore sees some very good results too. And similarly to all the very successful cities in the world, the priority that they made was their leaders said, we are going to focus on doing things smarter, more innovative, bolder, and we're going to focus on the environment. We're going to focus on the use of technology. They have digitized over 90% of all government services now. Over 90% can be accessed on smartphones and through other devices. and they made education, healthcare, and the environment also major priorities. It can be done, but it requires consistently this leadership. So as I wrap up today, I just wanted to say, this is the biggest topic of our time. Now, of course, I'm a little biased because this is my world. I spend a lot of time advising governments and working with governments and city leaders, and all sorts of stakeholders on the future of our communities. But it touches every aspect of being human, of the human experience. But it also creates economic opportunities, new jobs, and new jobs bring more money into the community. Things can be built and more wealth can be created, and a better life can be created for more and more people. I leave you with a question. What can you do? What can each of us do to build a higher quality of life in our communities? Now, if you liked anything I said today, I write about this a lot. I talk about this. I tour this. So I actually have 3 books right now on the topic of smart cities and the future of cities. One is for grown-ups, Smart Cities for Dummies, and it's not for dummies. It's for, smart, passionate people. And I've written a couple also for children. So you can go to smartcitybook.com, smartcitybook.com, and you can order these in Mexico and wherever you're dialing in from or wherever you're watching this. Know that you can go online or go to a bookstore and get my books about the cities. With that, I want to thank you very, very much for your attention. It's been a real joy. And I'll hand you back to Javier. Thank you again so much for this opportunity.
Gracias. Gracias, Jonathan. Súper interesante tu lectura, tu conferencia. No sé si tengan alguna pregunta antes de agradecerle al doctor Reichental. Si hubiera alguna pregunta que pusieran en el chat. Muy interesantes tus publicaciones. Hemos hablado con estudiantes y con profesionistas de varios países, y cuando vieron que ibas a estar aquí en el programa, les gustó mucho la idea, se emocionaron. Algunos particularmente, recuerdo de una universidad de Vancouver, en donde te leen mucho. Y pues no tenemos ninguna pregunta, algún comentario, ingeniero Felipe Flores, presidente del IMSIS.
I just want to take the word to say thank you to Jonathan, because this moment, these premium moments in the life, when we can hear, when we have the opportunity to be in touch with a person that, first of all, is a human being outstanding. That's the first thing that I need to do. Second thing is, it is important, as you mentioned, Jonathan, to be sensibilized, to be in contact with examples in another countries, in another portion of the world, that first of all, the human being has the capacity, has the knowledge, has the spirit to continue giving us solution for this problem that we are living at this moment. I believe, as you say in your words, that this is the correct time to accept that we make mistakes, that we did mistakes. And this is the time to accept them, and this is the time to correct them. So thanks so much for your participation, Jonathan. I hope that this is not gonna be your first participation in this Congress. I wait with anxious for your next participation. And from here, from Mexico City, please receive a big hug from all the community of the IMSIS. And we really, really appreciate, as a friend, as a human being, and thanks so much for sharing with us. Thanks so much, Jonathan. Take care.
Thank you. It's for the lovely, kind words. Such a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. You deserve it.
Muchas gracias nuevamente a nuestro bestseller de libros sobre Smart Cities. Sus títulos además son muy provocativos, si me permiten decirlo, invitan mucho a la lectura. Jonathan, un abrazo. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much, Jonathan. We'll be seeing you a big hug. Thank you very much.